Hey everyone, today for another vlog, and today I just want to talk about breathing into the feet. It's kind of an interesting felt experience, right? So the usual type of breathing that I guess I was gonna say we do, but I don't know who's listening, but that I'm usually involved with, which is very unconscious, shallow breathing. It's very different from when you actually consciously decide to breathe deeply, not just deeply into your belly, but also like even to your feet. Right? It's easier to do it when you're standing because there's like a straight line from your mouth to your legs. But it's really interesting to just really feel whatever is going on from the mouth to the feet. Um, I guess you could call that moving energy around. I think that's quite fair. Some people are kind of find the term energy a bit weird, but whatever. It's really more about feeling it than about having some kind of like elaborate theory about it. It's really interesting, right? So the way in which being on the ground, like having both of your feet on the ground, it's literally grounding like on a physical sense, but also grounding on a very real sense in terms of experience, and yeah, it makes me think about like to what degree are a lot of our metaphors we use actually not metaphors, or maybe it's like maybe it was like an old association or like an old experience that people had that kind of lost its meaning because of the way we our environments change so much, right? So obviously a lot of metaphors had to do with nature, for instance, and because we spend so little time in nature, well, as a result, the metaphors kind of stop making sense. That kind of deal. But with grounding, it's a very real sensation, right? Like to really feel both of your feet being grounded, and the way it helps you stay more emotionally like stable, right? Like not necessarily, it's obviously there are two types of like emotional averaging, right? There's like numbing yourself, being apathetic, which is the way most people do it, go about it honestly, to deal with their emotions. And then there is like how you could say containing, grounding. It's about like increasing your ability to handle overwhelm basically, I would say. So yeah, you could say increasing capacity, and grounding very much helps a lot with capacity and dealing with the difficult stuff, because it's so simple, I think, and it's very like effective, I would say. And yeah, the combination of that plus the breath, right, very conscious breathing, it's very interesting to feel. It's one of those things that is like not like hugely life changing, but it does make a pretty significant difference, right? Like especially I would assume if you did it over a long time versus if you did not, because it affects all areas of your life and so on. Yeah, and the way the breath is, I don't think I had anyone in my life talk about breathing until I got into like the self-improvement circles, which talk about meditation, and then you know about like spirituality, and then other more down-to-earth practices perhaps. But it's really interesting, right, to just see how our society is basically completely unconscious about breathing, even though it's basically like the one of the most effective way to like move around the energies in your body and to not feel stuck, emotionally speaking, I would say. Maybe in some sense it almost seems like a convenient uh, a convenient ignorance, because obviously when people are not good with dealing with their own emotions, then what do? They turn to numbness, as I say, and the type of numbness that we find is it's a type of numbness that comes with a cost, right? So the way people numb themselves is usually with the internet or yeah, usually with the internet or like porn or with drugs or whatever. Those things cost money explicitly or not. Like the internet obviously doesn't cost money, but you still need like a computer for it, for instance, right? Whereas if you only needed like yourself or friends, then you wouldn't really need computers in the first place to regulate yourself. And drugs obviously create addiction and so on. And in many ways, the world we live in is a world of addicts. Honestly, like for me, an addiction is not just about Substance for me, an addiction is like, how to say, like it's an activity that is mainly grounded in. It's mainly a coping mechanism that you cannot stop. Essentially, I would say an addiction is a. It's maybe it's a bit too general, so it might be worth like narrowing down. But I'm not really too concerned about the definition. But so like surfing the internet for me would be considered an addiction, even though it might not have like the same withdrawal symptoms as surface like substance abuse, which is an important distinction to make, obviously, right? So there are many degrees of addiction, like they're not all as equally bad for your body, for instance, but I would still the root of all of them are still very much it's still very much the same thing. It's the same like emotional hole that is being filled by an activity or substance, and it is no surprise then that people who are addicted to one thing usually turn to another addiction, right? So the people who are like addicted to porn, they might go and become addicted to video games, which again, I would say it's an improvement. I would say there are many degrees of addiction, so I would say it's an improvement. I mean, with video games, for example, you can make friends, or I mean, and also, it's, or at the same time, video games tend to cost money and so on, so maybe that was also a dumb stuff. But I would prefer being addicted to video games than being addicted to porn, for instance. Although obviously the best would be to address the actual root of the problem, right? So it's also worth keeping that in mind. Yeah. So I'd say it's very much a world of addicts, and the way it links up with the breathing to your feet type of things, because breathing is such a key component of emotional regulation. Like you see children and how they deal with stress and difficult situations, and it's it's all about the breath, right? They also tend to cry and move a lot, obviously. So it's not it's not all about the breath, but it's mainly about the breath, right? Like the way they breathe really deeply and really fast and so on to regulate their emotions, and then when they're calm, when the baby is asleep, it sleeps. It also breathes very deeply, right? Into its belly. It's very very interesting to witness, and so. Yeah, and there's kind of a detail in my life that I've always thought it was, inconvenient, but I didn't think of it much. But it's the fact that, as you can hear from my voice, right, I have a very nasal voice. That's because my nose is pretty much always stuffed from. As far as I know, it's because of allergies. I don't know if it's like a clear cause and effect. Maybe there are like several other factors at play, but the main factor at play being my allergies to like dust, like dust mites, more precisely, and other things. And yeah, basically pretty much always have a stuffed nose. And obviously, breathing through the nose is usually better. At least it's more convenient because it doesn't dry your mouth. But yeah, usually breathing through your nose is experientially better for some reason. I don't really have an explanation for why, but just in my experience, it just feels nicer to breathe through the nose. But because of a stuffed nose, it makes it difficult, and it's yeah. I mean, usually the workaround is very easy. It's just to like start doing like just to exercise very quickly, but like just doing jumping jacks or whatever to get my blood pumping, and then I can breathe through my nose. So there are many ways to work around it, even without medication. And but it's pretty annoying, right? Because like in the middle of the night, for instance, like I don't really I'm not able to breathe through my nose, so it's I wonder how much that affects me. I wonder if I'm able to get enough air in my body, for instance, to be like well recuperated. It's I don't know. It's weird to think about. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. This is I had way more to say than I expected. These days I just launch up the video and the recording and I just start talking. So I don't really have a plan. But yeah, thank you for listening and I'll see you next time.